This is Man to Man, the premier audio journal for men living faithfully and leading courageously. I'm Jared Musgrove, and every Live Faithfully episode is designed for man-to-men discussion, equipping you and the men in your community to live faithfully with God and one another. We are in the connecting Proverbs. That's what I like to call Proverbs 1 through 9 of the entire collection, because this cohesive section is about a capacity for relationships, men, about connecting, engaging our heart, and it's a compass for beginning in righteousness. We're in Proverbs 4 today, and it's the story of what it looks like to devote your life to Lady Wisdom. Now, you guys remember, she has been our constant companion really since the beginning of this journey. She'll be a constant companion with you throughout the lifespan of the Proverbs collection. That's how we're reading it. We're reading it as it's originally intended, to be a leadership manual, one for all men, that follows you and guides you throughout your entire life. And we are presented with several signposts in the Hebrew word derek, in the Hebrew word for heart, that is lave. We'll talk about two of those today, but we'll also engage another signpost for us, and that is Lady Wisdom. The father or the mentor here in Proverbs 4, verse 1 says this. Remember, we're sitting at his feet, and he is sharing with us, all of us, both as young men, as men who are experienced, or maybe men who are eyeing the finish line, how we can live and get wisdom that leads to godliness for a full and rich, holistic life. Here's how he opens up this chapter. Hear, O sons, a father's instruction, and be attentive that you may gain insight, for I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. So at this point, you can hear that the father-mentor's sense of time is passing, and you'll notice that he thinks all of us are about to be out of the house soon if we're young men about to set off on our own. Now, there's a plural sense you may have picked up on. He says, hear, O sons, a father's instruction. That's the plural in the Hebrew of this chapter. Now, perhaps that plural means that you've gotten some buddies together. That's what we're doing here on these Live Faithfully episodes, is we are getting men together, because that's how we grow, guys. That's how we transform. There's something to that even the ancients understood. And so there's a, hear, O sons, all y'all, if you will. Men are drawn to this kind of wisdom. If you are a man of any experience or age, just know that if you will live your life in this way, you have a right to call young men up in this way and give them the kind of instruction, maybe the direct instruction that Proverbs 1 through 9 is giving us. And that's a good thing. Young men, all of us need to be sitting at the feet of someone who walks in this way, learning. And that's what these connecting Proverbs are really all about. It's a good thing, regardless of your age. Now, the father mentor's got you sitting down, and some of us can just go like, okay, we roll our eyes at him. But think about your past, man, whether it was your recent past as a young man, or maybe it was a few years back. Too many of us maybe missed out on some of this wisdom from our own fathers or mentors. And if we did, here's a chance to be fathered rightly. He says, hear, O sons, a father's instruction, and be attentive. Don't roll your eyes. Don't check out. Here is a man who is lovingly sharing with each of us what a father faithfully shared with him. Proverbs 4, 3 through 6 gets into this. The father mentor says, and remembers, when I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast my words, keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom, get insight. Do not forget and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Here we are introduced in full to the personification of wisdom. She is a woman in the Proverbs collection. We call her Lady Wisdom. Perhaps you've heard of her. If you've been listening in, you certainly have. Proverbs may be male in orientation, but wisdom is always personified as a woman in the collection. And the commands continue in chapter 4, where we are commanded as men to embrace Lady Wisdom, and with her, an unimpeachable life. Guys, the message of these connecting Proverbs is Lady Wisdom. Men, you pursue her. Young women, you become her. More for you men about all that after this. Hey dads, it might be time to break free from distractions and refocus on what matters most, your family. Glorietta Family Camp is a 4 or 6 night adventure made to bring your family closer to God and one another. It's designed for intentional family time with devotionals, adventure activities, and so much more. You can join Family Camp this summer for a most unique family vacation and learn why adventure is the best kind of family bonding. Register today at glorietta.org or by clicking the link in our show notes. We're back. Now, remember, we're sitting here with a good father, mentor, perhaps parents. We're sitting with some buddies as well, maybe like you men are, in that circle where either you're listening to this or you're going to talk about this later this week. And the father mentor, these parents, they are praying and longing for you to choose Lady Wisdom, to choose her as your lifelong love affair, men, or your lifelong example, young women. Remember what we said earlier about repetition? That's something the Proverbs collection, ancient Hebrew, wisdom literature, and storytelling do most often. And it says something important about how God made each of us, guys. You'll likely notice a lot of repetition even on this series, because this series is a text-shaped series for you and your men's group. So we're going to repeat as often as the sacred text of the Proverbs collection. These are God's words for us through the voice of a father or mentor. And he is repeating over and over that you are to pursue Lady Wisdom. Again, wisdom personified as a woman, the lifelong love affair. He goes on in Proverbs 4, 6 through 9 and talks about her, says directly, do not forsake her and she will keep you. Love her and she will guard you. Get wisdom, prize her rightly, and she will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown. He goes on here in just a minute in chapter 4, verse 13, and says, keep hold of instruction. Do not let go. Guard her, for she is your life. The language is that of urging, gentlemen, urging you to make Lady Wisdom your lifelong love affair and your constant companion, to be drawn to her. In fact, that's a prayer that we can pray for ourselves, for one another, for our own sons. We could ask the Lord to draw us to wisdom. Remember, Solomon is the collector, writer, or compiler of most of these Proverbs, and he was the man who asked God for wisdom, and God gave it. He knew that such wisdom would lead him as he's leading others, and this kind of wisdom, followed for your entire life, can lead to an unimpeachable life. And so this father mentor is even so good as to share in these passages in chapter 4 the consequences of choosing Lady Wisdom. You'll notice, guys, as you read through the entire chapter, and I'd suggest you do as you're sitting together around in your group this week, how many more do's there are than don'ts. Here are the consequences of choosing Lady Wisdom for your life, men. Listen to this. You are kept. You are loved. You are guarded. You are exalted. You are honored. You are embraced. There's a garland, like a crown, on your head, and it's a beautiful crown, if we describe it. They want your imagination, your father mentor. So they spend all of chapter 4 telling you the story of what it looks like to spend a life with Lady Wisdom. We are to choose her as a lifelong companion. And there are other signposts in this admonition to pursue her as well. The father goes on and he says, I've taught you the way. There's our Hebrew word again, Derek. There's our signpost. I've taught you the way, that is the way of life, the way of being, not just a path that you take or place your feet go, but this is how you conduct yourself. He says, I've taught you the way, Derek, of wisdom. I've led you in the paths. Now, these are roads of righteousness. So I've not only put before you, men, how you are to be in your character, in your nature, in your approach to life, but I've also pointed you down the physical road, the path of righteousness. Can you sense that this father mentor is recognizing that you're soon to take out on that very real path, that you're soon in these chapters to leave your home and set out on your own? That idea and that picture informs everything in these connecting Proverbs, but particularly for us, everything that's about to come for us in these next weeks in chapters 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. They introduce to us, well, rather briefly, another lady, and we'll get into her some next time on chapter 5. That's going to be the strange woman, or Lady Folly. And her full introduction comes a chapter from now. For now, they have spent much time sharing with you about your way, about Lady Wisdom. Before they introduce Lady Folly, they spent a lot of time introducing and getting you to know Lady Wisdom. They begin sharing with you about this other way, this strange woman or Lady Folly. They say, Proverbs 4, 14, and 19, do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not walk in the way, Derek, of evil. The way, Derek, of the wicked is like deep darkness. they do not know over what they stumble. Man, so you leave in this chapter the way of wisdom and the right paths that wisdom gives you, and says, while we're exalting Lady Wisdom, let me tell you, and let me just preview for you what's coming. There are paths that lead to wickedness. There is a way of life and being that is, like the Father Mentor says, deep darkness, to the point that you don't even know what you're stumbling over. So the final admonition, the Father's closing words here in this proverb, is to you and the men sitting with you, hearing this Father Mentor. It's all about your heart. That's what he closes this address out with. It is a Father Mentor's lave for you. Remember, we talked about that. That is the Hebrew idea of heart. That it is not just our out of control emotions, but it is the very center of our being, our decision making, not just feelings and not divorced from cognition. It is, in a sense, our way. And this is his Father Mentor's heart, his lave for you, and his prayer for you. He says to all of you guys sitting together, he says, keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. That's an important image for this entire section, and really for the rest of the Proverbs collection. The conduct of one's life is a spring of water that must flow from a reliable source. The heart, gentlemen, is the target of all true transformation. Now, it's a fascinating image. It is your mind, emotions, and it dictates all your actions. You are courageously charged to keep your heart with all vigilance. The conduct of your life is a spring of water that must flow from a reliable, unimpeachable source. I'll put it this way. You can either be a fountain of life or a drain on everybody. The state of your heart will determine the flow of your life and your legacy. The closing words of this Proverbs 4 discourse prepare us for the details of what's coming for us in Proverbs 5. The Father Mentor says, and closes this entire section out, he says, ponder the path of your feet. Then all your ways, Derek, will be sure. Do not swerve to the left or to the right. Turn your foot away from evil. That is, reject evil, reject folly, and then walk in the way. And if you do this, men, your life will be a wellspring. Your way will actually be a blessing to others, just like a cool drink on a hot day. That's the picture that we're to get here in Proverbs chapter 4. So here's some questions for you guys this week. As you're sitting together, you're talking over this text, you're reading it out loud, you're praying over one another. I mentioned Solomon was author and lead compiler of the Proverbs collection. A lot of these are drawn from his own family and life experience. They have to be. So as you're sitting together this week, read about Solomon's final words from his father, David. Read 1 Kings chapter 2, 1 through 4. That's 1 Kings chapter 2, 1 through 4. Where do you see similarities in the charge David gave his son Solomon and those of the Father Mentor here in Proverbs 4? Here's another question for you guys. Where do you sense wisdom was passed on to your generation? Might be a person, might be a pastor, might be a mentor. And then I want you to share that, and I want you to share, where do you feel that wisdom was lacking for you? What will you do differently to see that wisdom is passed on in your generation, in your way? I also mentioned here that there's more do's than don'ts in this chapter of the Proverbs collection. What does that say to you, men, about the value of wisdom? How would that correspond with leading an unimpeachable life? A lot more do's than don'ts as far as walking in the way of wisdom. And finally, guys, in what area of your life do you need wisdom right now? Share that around the circle this week. Where do you need the counsel of Proverbs 4, 25 through 27? Maybe even read that verse over one another and spend time sharing and pray over one another in the areas where you need wisdom right now. That's Proverbs chapter 4, men. Live faithfully. Man to Men is powered by Beta Upsilon Chi, commonly referred to as Bucks. We exist to equip and empower college men to live faithfully and lead courageously. You can find out more about Beta Upsilon Chi by transliterating our Greek letters and adding a .org. That's byx.org. Please subscribe, give us a rating, a comment, and consider giving to our work by following the partner link in the show notes. We are produced rather well, I might add, by the good gentlemen of the Good Podcast Company. For Beta Upsilon Chi, I'm Dr. Jared Musgrove with Man to Men.